She is on.
She is on.
We'll call this to order. Vice Chair Belong, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Huboy,
Present.
Chair Henderson,
Present.
Vice Chair Corona. Or excuse me, Commissioner Corona,
Present.
Vice Chair Belong,
Present.
and Commissioner Lenore. Verification of agenda posting was Monday, May 22nd at 2:47 p.m.
Thank you. We'll move on to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
It was 27th and also May 11th as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I on April, but I abstained from May because I was absent.
Okay.
And I abstain from both.
Okay. Is that clear? The vote clear?
So it should be Commissioners Henderson, Corona, and Lenore. I on the May 11th, because Commissioner Huboy is abstaining, and then Commissioner Huboy, Henderson, Corona, and Lenore on the April 27th.
That's correct. Thank you. We will move on to public input. This is a time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the secretary before speaking. When the secretary calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the City Planning Commission. If you are joining us by Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you are joining us by Zoom using a cell phone, please press *9. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the Planning Commission from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
I have no speakers for the public comment section.
Thank you. We will close the public input. Move on to public hearings. Item 1, Site and Architectural Review 2023-3. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. This item is for Site and Architectural Review 2023-3, which is a project located at 1960 and 1970 Airway Drive. And staff is requesting a continuance to a date certain of the June 22nd, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, as the project is still under review by the Airport Land Use Commission. And so that hearing will take place before the June Planning Commission meeting. And then we'd like to bring any conditions of approval that come from that along with the project to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay, we will open the public comment for item 1 at 6:06.
I do have a speaker for item 1, Carson Clark.
Good evening, Commissioners. First of all, I just want to say thank you to staff for their work on this. It's been a nice little process that we've had to go through. And just wanted to extend an invitation to meet or discuss the project with you guys sometime in the next month, if anybody's interested. I think it is a project that's really needed at this point with RV storage facilities the way they are impacted capacity wise, and the new ordinance is going into place. So once again, if anybody wants to chat, my number is 831-801-0858. If you just Google my name, it'll come up. And once again, thank you to staff, and hopefully we'll see you guys next month. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Check online, 1 second. I have no other speakers.
Thank you. We'll close the public input at 6:07.
Or do we continue it to date certain now?
Yeah,
have
you'll,
to say that?
you'll make a motion in a
Okay.
second and vote.
Okay, in the motion.
Okay, so motion, can we get a motion to continue to a date certain of, I saw two different dates. There was the 22nd and the 29th. So which is the correct date?
Probably the.
Let me
the
confirm
fourth
on a calendar.
Behind you. The three.
June
month-
22nd.
Okay,
Yes, anything saying the 29th is in error. The 22nd is the fourth Thursday.
okay,
I
thank you.
move that we continue this item to a date certain of June 22nd.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to item 2, site and architectural review 2023-1. Staff report, please.
Thank you. This item will be presented by Magda Gonzalez, our senior planner. She is online today. Magda, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. I am presenting Site and Architectural Review 2023-1. The applicant, it's REW Solar Development LLC. Next slide, please. The request is approval to construct the Statoil Battery Energy Storage System, better known as BESS, which is a 10 megawatt unmanned battery storage facility. Next slide, please. The project is located at 431 Gateway Drive. It is outlined in red here on this graph. As you can see, the site is surrounded substantially by commercial development already. To the northwest, you will see an empty parcel as well as the PG&E Hollister substation. There are also a couple of hotels to the east, and to the west on residential development. There's a trucking company to the south. Further north, you'll find some farmland, but that is not immediately adjacent to the parcel. Next slide, please. The site proposes to install or construct a battery facility and additional improvements, which include all-weather fire access, a permeable drainage area and landscape around the perimeter, as well as an 8-foot tall fence for privacy and also for aesthetics. Here are the elevations proposed for this project. The highest one, I'm sorry, can you move on to the next slide? It shows it more in detail. The tallest equipment is 9 foot 5 inches. And the proposed fence is 8 foot, so therefore it would only go over the fence by 1 foot 5 inches, securing that it will ensure privacy. And as I previously mentioned, there will be landscape around the entire perimeter, including trees. Can you move on to the next slide, please? The next one is 8 foot 5 inches. Next slide, please. And then they gradually go down in height by 8 feet, 6 feet, and so forth. Next slide, please. Here are some pictures of the equipment. All the color proposed is white. They're all enclosed in containers. The inverters, the battery units, and the transformers. We will ask for samples of the paint colors prior to issuing permit issuance, just to ensure that the colors aren't glaring and that they won't be visually inhibiting. Can you move to the next slide, please? As I previously mentioned, they are installing landscaping around the entire perimeter, ensuring that it is aesthetically appealing with the surrounding properties. As we mentioned, there's already 2 hotels to neighboring this property. So we want to make sure that if there's any pedestrians, out and about, they won't be impacted by this site. Next slide, please. The proposal is compliant with the general plan because it promotes energy efficiency and conservation of minimal resources. This project is rather small and minimal in size and height and impacts to the surrounding. It will not impact any of the utilities. And it will have access to public utilities already on site. It will not result in any significant traffic, noise, or quality since there will be no employees on this site. There will maybe yearly visits to the site just for maintenance, but it will be close to the public and it won't have any employees, and the containers are self-enclosed. So we don't expect much noise or any other nuisance. It's also exempt from CEQA pursuant to Class 32, the infill development. As I previously mentioned, the parcel is already surrounded by commercial development to the northwest, to the east, and the north and the south. To the west, it's full of residential development. Staff feels that it does comply and meet with all the requirements for this exemption. Next slide, please. As such, the staff recommends that the Planning Commission either take the first option, which is to adopt a resolution approving the Site and Architectural Review 2023-1, subject to the findings and conditions of approval. Option 2, adopt a resolution approving the SNA 2023-1 with findings and conditions of approval modified by the Planning Commission. Option 3, deny the proposed project, or option 4, continue the hearing and direct staff to provide additional information for clarification. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt option 1, approval of the Site and Architectural Review 2023-1. That concludes my presentation. Available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I guess I do. Question.
Please go ahead.
Well, I read the report a couple times. Any chance, I just am concerned, well, I don't want to state my opinion, but do you expect any noise, vibration, or interference of any kind?
No, not anything that wouldn't be allowed with the municipal code now.
Okay. So no noise or vibration emanating from the storage of batteries.
Yes, not anything that would rise above what's currently allowed on the municipal code. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got new homes there. Don't want to. Okay, thank you. That was my only question. Appreciate it.
And we do have a condition of approval addressing noise on there as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question regarding emergency access. So as far as it being gated, does the fire department have access 24/7 to it?
Yes, part of the conditions is to install a Knox box, which will grant them access to the facility.
Thank you.
I had a question. If someone could put the slide up of the overhead view. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was curious about the fire access. So looks like the northwest corner, it looks like a pretty tight turn. I don't know if a fire truck could make that turn. Was that considered at all in the design?
Yes, it was provided and sent over to the fire department, and they did issue conditions. They didn't have any further requirements regarding the width of the driveway. If we can move to the prior slide, I'm sorry, there was another one showing the fire access road. That was one of the requirements. Yeah, on here. we didn't receive any other comments from the fire department requiring that road to be expanded or the driveway.
Okay. So I had a question about what the purpose, I mean, I know it's a battery storage that can store 10 megawatts, but what is it, why is it needed? Or maybe the applicant can speak to that.
Yeah, we will be able to give you further information.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, we will open the public comment at 6:17. Any speakers?
Yes, I have Victor Gomez.
Honorable Chair Henderson, members of the commission, pleasure to be here with you. I do just want to let you know that we do have Scott and Lindsay on the line on Zoom, and they could certainly answer your any technical questions that you folks may have. Regarding the fire, we do have fire. Obviously, staff does it, and I do it independently as well. Have my projects reviewed by Charlie Bedoya and have access obviously reviewed. So we have had that reviewed. And in addition to that, and I'm sure Scott and Lindsay can answer these questions as well, but specifically on your question, Kevin, on the need, it's no coincidence that RWE is here with this project. This area does have quite a bit of brownouts and blackouts as well. So it's important that obviously we have that ability to store power here locally, considering those circumstances. And as you folks probably already know as well, PG&E will be updating the North Hollister substation next year to obviously expand their capabilities for additional industrial growth to the north end of the city. So hopefully that answered your question, Kevin, but we do have Scott and Lindsay on the line as well to answer any questions. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I do have a couple of technical questions for the applicant representatives. My first question is, this is a fully automated storage facility for solar power. Have there been other facilities such as this, or is this relatively new?
Lindsay, I've
It's a new
allowed you
undertaking.
to unmute yourself if that's a question for you. You can go ahead.
Thank you. I actually think Scott from RWE should take this one, please.
I don't see a Scott online. Is Rob with your project?
No, that's
Okay.
interesting. Would you mind repeating the question? I provide the environmental support for the project. I'm affiliated with Stantec Consulting. So if it's specific to the actual industry, I do think we should hold off until Scott comes back.
Okay, well, I do have an environmental question. Maybe you can answer that for me. Are there any toxicity or pollutants or hazmat concerns associated with this project that you can tell me about?
No, we actually did review, we conduct a environmental constraints review for all proposed projects, and that does include hazardous substances and petroleum product reviews through the EnviroStore and California State Water Resources Control Board GeoTracker databases. And for this site, there were no hazardous materials or waste sites or facilities identified.
What is the type of construction associated with this project? Is it, is it on your cover sheet? I didn't see that. Is it like an H?
My understanding, and it does sound like Scott's on, so I'll have him verify, but based on our reviews, it's standard construction equipment that would be limited in use. I don't know if we might have to defer that again to Scott.
Okay. Those are my questions. Those are the extent of my questions for now.
I'll ask my question if I have another one. Question. I see you're gonna use chain link fence. So I'm assuming that it'll be all covered up at some point when the shrubs grow. We won't see any chain link fence? Is that the intent of the landscaping around the fence?
Yes,
'Cause
and
I-
there's been also coordination with the school regarding the fencing.
Coordination with who? Oh. The,
Sorry, the landscaping, there is landscaping in and around the chain link fence, yes.
right, I just
Thank you.
wanted to know if, will it grow up above the fence so we don't see it? Is that what it's designed as?
Yes, I believe so, and I can double check that.
Because, you know, we're trying to get away from chain link in the city, so. If it's gonna be visible, then I think our policy is to not do chain link, but if it's gonna be covered, then I don't mind it. Do planners have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so chain link isn't one of the prohibited materials in the city, but that was the intent of the planning staff when we discussed having them fully landscape around this property, was to make sure that the landscaping would also act as a screen, both for the fence, but also for the use. And we worked with the applicant to make sure that that was on all four sides, so that any future development as well, or changes in the uses next door, would still be screened, even though there was a discussion about not screening between the existing PG&E substation, but you know, this property is an individual site. So the applicant was very willing to work with us on making sure that this was a wholly inclusively screened site.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
So how long has the substation been there? Question for staff.
I don't have that answer. I
Okay.
apologize. Yeah.
But the reason, but this location is picked because the substation is right there, correct?
I would imagine so. yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers?
We're having some difficulty with Scott. I see that there's 4 attendees, but his name isn't popping up. I do have a speaker online, Tara Rengifo. I'll go ahead and allow you to speak, Tara. Hang on.
Before she speaks, I would like my first question answered when Scott, I believe his name is online, because this is the first time I've ever seen a project like this. And my concern is that if this is a project that has been proven and tried and proven, that would give me a comfort level associated with it. But if it's a new innovative project that is testing a proving ground of I can understand the purpose of it for storage of electrical energy and putting it back into the grid. I think that's a good thing, but I'm really new to this. And so I would just like to know if there have been successful projects of this type that are in existence today.
Commissioner Huboy, I can at least share with you that this is not RWE's first project. We do have a substantial amount of projects worldwide in this space.
Okay.
I'm actually trying to get some local examples. I know that we had an approval down in Santa Barbara County, I want to say not too long ago. So this would not be anything new to RWE or to clean energy. But I'm trying to pull up specific examples as we try to get Scott on as well. So to answer your questions, this wouldn't be the RWE's first project.
Well, what about the best system? That's what he's asking, I think. The whole system.
It is not anything. Yeah, it's nothing new. Yeah, I mean, we've had some examples here locally, not RWE's projects, but again, I'll try to pull some of these and get
Okay,
those
thanks.
examples for you.
We had a phone number online for a second, but it's not there anymore. We do have a speaker, Tara Rengifo, if that's.
Okay, let's try this. Let's go with the speaker.
All right, Tara, go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Tara Rengifo on behalf of Citizens for Responsible Industry. We filed comments today in response to the staff report. Citizens request that the commission remand the project to staff to comply with CEQA. The infill exemption is facially inapplicable to the project, and the commission cannot make the required findings to approve the site and architectural review. First, the project has potentially significant impacts on air quality and public health, rendering the exemption inapplicable. Project construction equipment will emit diesel particulate matter that may cause significant public health impacts, especially considering that the Hollister Child Development Center is located a mere 417 feet from the project. Project construction equipment, if not Tier 4 or higher, may also result in significant air quality impacts. The project is not exempt from CEQA because the conditions of approval require noise suppression devices and techniques as mitigation for the project's potentially significant noise impacts. This goes beyond what is required by the municipal code. Mitigated categorical exemptions are expressly prohibited under CEQA, and exceptions to the Class 32 exemption are also applicable. Substantial evidence demonstrates that the project would have a significant effect on human health and the environment due to unusual circumstances. This energy storage system is nothing like the commercial development described in the general plan for the general commercial designation, which focuses on development like retail or a hotel. Fires at a battery storage facility are also extremely dangerous. The project's potentially significant impacts must be studied in an EIR. Second, to approve the site and architectural review, the commissioner must find that the project would not be detrimental to the health and safety of persons in the area or to the general welfare of the city. This finding is not supported by evidence. Approval of the project would significantly impact air quality, public health, noise, and hazards to the detriment of nearby residents, hotel guests, and children at the daycare. The commission therefore cannot approve the site and architectural review. This project presents risks to the city's residents and businesses that have not been adequately evaluated and disclosed to the public or the commission. We urge the commission to consider our comments and remand the project to staff to prepare an EIR. Thank you.
Hi, Tara. I have a question. You mentioned particulate matter as being a concern. Could you explain how this site would affect the air quality?
Yes, particulate matter can be in the form of PM10 or PM2.5. And here what we're saying is that there could be potentially significant air quality impacts during construction activities that can cause the particulate matter to be airborne from dust and that sort of thing. So while the site is being graded or the cars are driving around, vehicles are driving around, equipment is being moved around and blowing dust in the air, that would be one source of particulate matter that can become airborne and pose a significant air quality impact.
You used a term that I'm not sure everyone's familiar with. You said PM10 and PM2.5. Could you just explain that?
Sure, just very simple, just go to the different sizes of the dust particles themselves, but both PM stands for particulate matter, so that would be the dust is what that's referring to.
Okay, so the concern about particulate matter has to do with the construction phase, not during when the site is in operation. Is that correct?
With regards to a significant impact on air quality, the concern would be mainly during construction activities, correct?
Thank you. And then you mentioned something about unusual circumstances. I was wondering if you could explain what you meant by that.
Yeah, so under CEQA, you can apply a categorical exemption for certain classes of projects. And here staff is asserting that the Class 32 infill exemption applies. And so our letter that we submitted today on behalf of citizens explains that, first and foremost, the different factors that go into whether the categorical exemption would apply to this project are facially inapplicable. So the exemption does not, the factors are not met here for various reasons. But there's also exceptions to the exemptions under CEQA. And one exception is that there are significant effects from unusual circumstances. So our comments go into detail about why this project would present unusual circumstances and trigger the exception to the exemption that staff's asserting applies. So for this project in particular, the fact that it's in the general commercial designation, you're seeing a lot of hotels and retail and those kinds of businesses. This is a battery storage facility, which is very different than those kinds of uses under the general plan designation. Also, in terms of the fire risks from battery storage systems, they're unique and unusual in and of themselves. If there was to be a fire, how to put out that fire when it comes to a battery energy storage system is different than other scenarios that may be just a general building fire, given the different components of the system, for example. So those would be two examples of unusual circumstances here to trigger that exception to the exemption, meaning additional CEQA review would be required.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker?
I'd like to get a staff response on the CEQA review requirement. Eva would. I know this is infill.
Is the
Is
public
that,
hearing
would that be,
I do want to let you know that Lindsay is available to answer those questions regarding the CEQA analysis. And we have answers to those questions.
I don't know if it's appropriate at this time, but maybe after the public hearing is.
Well, we're in public hearing, so I guess you have a question for staff, you can save it.
Okay.
For after the public hearing. If you have a question for the speaker, that would be the right time to ask.
I know it's a bit unusual, but I do have Scott Schwartz on the phone. If that's okay. I know we've had these technical issues on Zoom, but I could put him forward if you'd like. I know you had a question, Commissioner Huboy.
You're just gonna hold the phone up?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Scott, can you hear us?
Thank you so much. And commissioners, I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. My name is Scott Schwartz. I'm the Vice President of Development for Solar, Energy Storage, and Wind at RWE. We are the largest renewable energy company in the state of California. We are one of the top 5 largest battery storage operators and owners globally. We have over 1 gigawatt hours of battery storage operationally. We have never had any issue with our entire fleet as far as fire safety is concerned. And RWE has repeatedly used unionized labor in the construction of all of its projects in the state of California. The lawyer that you just heard from represents essentially utility companies and organized labor, and is seeking for us to enter into a project labor agreement. We have previously worked with this law firm and entered into project labor agreements on our Northern Orchard Solar Project, Fifth Standard Solar Project, Janus Solar Project, and they similarly have showed up at these hearings with a long list of environmental concerns that are truly aimed at getting us to enter into a project labor agreement, which we always agree to. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure you have some.
I do. Oh,
Please go ahead. Or actually, David had his
That's
first
correct.
question.
My question
That's
was
correct.
answered
Okay.
previously. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
So again, I did catch the union stuff. Are you bound by some law on a private project to go with union workers? That's my question. But
we are not. And if we do not use union labor, they will essentially extend through CEQA the entire process. And again, we have used union labor on every project RWE has constructed in the state of California. We have worked with Adams Broadwell before on multiple projects. Simply put, we didn't reach out to them beforehand, and this is what happens.
Well, I can go. I mean, I don't see the relevance in planning. I'm a union supporter big time, but I didn't see the relevance in this planning commission application. So that's one thing that I noticed. That's my only question on that. I'll make more comment after.
Any other questions?
Commissioners, if you don't mind, I just want to reiterate the point that Victor made earlier tonight. The reason that we selected this point on the grid is because of blackouts and brownouts. For California to change to an entirely renewable energy source without having firm baseload, there will be a risk of blackouts and brownouts. By having energy storage, it is the linchpin that allows California to use intermittent renewable energy without risking blackouts. That's why we are here today talking about this project in the city of Hollister.
Any other questions for the speaker?
Can you sort of say that we're gonna lessen the strain? You know, we don't get the blackouts as much as maybe a little in South County, but downtown Hollister and Hollister, we didn't really suffer too much brownouts or blackouts, but I could see where it might be leading that way more. So would this alleviate that, as you're saying? This would be a positive thing, right?
Yes, ma'am. One of the
gonna
primary
benefit
uses of battery
Hollister.
storage will be frequency regulation. And that is to manage the grid at 60 hertz, which is much more difficult to do when there are intermittent resources like wind and solar, where you can't predict how many electrons they're going to generate if the wind isn't blowing or if the sun isn't up. And battery storage allows kind of the constant flow of electrons through the grid at the same frequency to avoid blackouts and brownouts.
So it directly benefits the county of San Benito, our area right here. It's gonna help us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
I had a question for the applicant regarding, you said there's going to be nobody on site, but when maintenance needs to be done, I mean, that's, I would assume, typically done during business hours? There's nothing that happens during off hours?
The only reason somebody would come during off hours is if there's an incident, if something isn't working, but typically these facilities will be checked for maintenance on a monthly basis. It will be monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at our operations center. We have one in both San Diego and Austin that fall under FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And really, we have assets that are about an hour away. So our crews would regularly come during just business hours, and you're talking about, 1 or 2 people in a pickup truck coming once a month. They're not going to be kicking up dust. They're going to be coming in to just check and make sure that the battery storage facility is operating as it's designed.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Can you describe the fire attenuation system that's associated with this project? Is it, you go on airplanes and they ask you if you have any batteries in your luggage. Is it lithium based, and what type of fire suppression system is being proposed here?
So what we proposed uses a water injection unit. There's gas detection. Essentially, if any module in the storage facility goes beyond a certain rate, we're going to be alerted about it immediately and be able to literally turn it off in real time. So within, call it a second, the way our automation system works is that if anything starts to heat up, you turn it off. We have about 1 gigawatt hour. This is proposed as a 10 megawatt battery operating with a 4-hour duration, so 40 megawatt hours. And what I'm mentioning, we've never had, we're one of the largest battery storage developers, operators, and owners. We have never had a fire incident across our entire fleet.
How long have
These are designed to self-consume in the event of a fire. We regularly provide training to local AHJs to tell them about, how they should handle anything. If it were to occur, we're going to have an emergency action plan. Really, it's always in our best interest to make sure that any fire departments understand exactly what this is and how they should react if in the event there is a fire.
Thank you. How long have the other projects been in operation?
We built our first battery storage project about 8 years ago.
I don't have any further questions at this time.
Thank you, Chair Henderson, and I'll keep Scott on the line in case you have any other questions. Okay.
And I just want to say thank you again. I'm so sorry for this unusual circumstance. My wife is a critical care physician and is unfortunately working nights tonight, and I'm on baby duty and unable to join you in person. But thank you for your time.
We do have one more question from Commissioner Balon. Scott.
Please.
Yes, so there were some instances back east recently where people were targeting facilities. I don't know if it was similar to your facility, but basically power grids and things of that nature. Is there any type of security cameras or anything like that that will be installed for this facility?
So the attacks that have occurred have been at electrical substations. So battery storage facilities themselves have never been targeted as far as we're tracking. It's been literally, the adjacent Hollister substation infrastructure like that to try to essentially damage the grid. So for us, this would be a significant investment. We'll have closed circuit CCTV, but we don't want anybody being able to enter the facility, and that's why we're going to have the fencing. That's why, again, it is in our best interest for the only people to go in there to be employees of RWE who are conducting routine maintenance, potentially fire crews if we're giving training. But other than that, we would not expect anybody to be entering this facility, and we'd expect those gates to be preventative in terms of anybody trespassing.
So there will be security cameras on site?
There likely will be CCTVs on site.
Okay.
That brings about a question that I have regarding the fencing. Is, let's say, I know with the talking about security, in this built environment of EMFs and all that, if let's say children were to bridge the fence, would they be in any type of danger with EMF radiation or any of that type of exposure?
No, the relative EMF of the project the substation to the north is actually going to be much higher than the EMF of the battery storage facility itself. So any child who entered that substation would be at greater risk than if they entered our project site. But again, the EMF, because of the relatively small size of these batteries, frankly, we've built projects we just energized one in Fresno County that is over 10 times the size of this, and the EMF from that project does not pose any health and human safety hazard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and I'll keep you on for any potential questions.
Great. Thank you again, and my apologies for not being able to appear in person.
have one
And I
more.
just want to reiterate for the record, RWE supports union labor in California and intends to use union labor in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have another question.
So
You thought it was over, Scott. Hold on one second.
my question for you would be, approximately how many households or customers could a facility this size potentially service should the grid need the help?
So we are not generating any electricity. This is not co-located with a solar plant. So the use that it's providing is different than a gas plant, a wind plant, a solar plant. We are there to create grid resiliency. So wherever on that substation, when there are transformers that are going down into distribution lines that feed households, that feed small businesses, the intent of having the battery storage is to essentially make sure that the grid is never running the risk of creating a blackout or a brownout. So it's not that we're necessarily creating energy for households, but rather ensuring the stability of the grid for those households. We are storing electricity and then discharging that electricity when the grid needs it to make sure that the flow is firm and constant.
All right, any other questions?
And is this project is 100% privately funded?
RWE is seeking to invest $10 billion in the state of California from its balance sheet within the next 5 years. This project will be, we do not rely on external financing. We balance sheet finance our projects.
Okay, any other speakers?
I have no other speakers, Mr. Chair, but I will state for the record, and it did come up in one of the speakers, the city did receive a letter from Tara Rengifo, from Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardoso related to this project, and copies were provided to the Planning Commission and are available to the public in the City Hall.
Thank you. We will close the public comment at 6:47. Right, what is any comments or questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question. I guess now is the appropriate time to ask. Because I received this information from Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardozo. And I checked my email. It was emailed 2 hours before this meeting. And there is contention about whether or not this project qualifies for an infill environmental exemption. So I just would like to hear what the staff response would be on that contention.
Yes, so staff believes that the project does qualify for a CEQA categorical infill exemption. And I'm looking at the letter because it outlines the guidelines for me for section 15.332. Section A is that it's consistent with the general plan designation, the policies and applicable zoning designation regulations. This is located in our general commercial zoning district, which does allow a utilities use. And the substation to the north could be argued a more intensive utility use that's also located within the general commercial. So this is similar and lesser than an existing use neighboring in this area that is within the same designation. The project is within the city limits and it's less than 5 acres, so it meets that categorical exemption requirement. The project staff believes has no value for habitat for endangered rare threatened species. It's substantially surrounded by existing urban development and is relatively small. There's no waterways or anything nearby that would suggest that this is a site for an endangered species. And approval of the project would not result in significant effects relating to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. The standard conditions of approval that the city places, as well as following the municipal code, already mitigate any construction air quality issues. As stated in the staff report, there's no anticipated noise impacts that are exceeding any of the regulations for general commercial. And there's no impacts to the water quality that staff could see. And with related to traffic, as you've heard in the staff report and from the applicants, there's anticipated to be extremely minimal traffic to this site. It is unmanned except for the occasional maintenance vehicle. And then the final exemption requirement is that the site can be adequately served by required utilities and public services. And as mentioned in the staff report, this site is nearby to existing utilities, and any utilities that can be served can be found in Gateway or nearby. But I believe they're all coming from Gateway Drive, right at the frontage of the project. So we do believe that the project is categorically exempt under the infill, and that is contained in your staff report.
Thank you, Eva.
Could you move the slide to the last one with the decisions, I guess? Okay, thank you. So any further comments from the commission? We'll start with Commissioner Lenore.
Okay, I heard the concern regarding the construction dust. But I was wondering, our engineering standard condition of grading and best management practice control, typically we have dust control that we have to abide by on construction sites. Is that part of the best management there? I mean, I know we do dust control in residential all the time. Do we do it here as well?
Yes, that's a standard condition of
It's
approval.
Yeah, okay. So if we were to say we can't do this because it's gonna impact the whatever business there and the kids, well, you'll render it unusable because any site's gonna kick up dust when they're doing construction. So what we just want to make sure is that they adhere to the state laws and the MBARD, Monterey Bay Air Resource District's regulations, or whoever's governing that for the dust control. I believe it is a public utility and the general commercial. But I had a question, was this SNA subject to 300-foot notice or not?
Yes, all site and architecture reviews or anything that
Okay.
comes before the planning commission for
Right,
public hearing is 300 noticed.
Did you get any letters from anybody?
The only letter we received is the one mentioned from Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardoso.
So you feel comfortable that you reached the people to the west in the residential subdivision? That's Allendale, is that Allendale?
Yes, that is the Allendale
So that you
subdivision.
went and you got all those folks on that outer border, right?
We utilized the latest
Yeah.
GIS assessors data.
And you didn't
for
get
the-
any letters?
Okay.
That's all my comments and my last question. Thank you.
Commissioner Corona, any comments? Okay, I'll just say the project makes sense to me. I think they've I don't have any safety concerns. And I understand the need for this, given the trend in power, renewable energy. So I understand what they're trying to do. So those are the only comments that I have. Mr. Belong, any comments? Okay. Any final comments?
I have no further comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion?
I'll move that we adopt resolution number 2023-16 of the City of Hollister Planning Commission for Site and Architectural to construct a 10-megawatt unmanned battery energy storage system located at 431 Gateway Drive with all the conditions and findings as stated on the resolution.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion and a second. So can Christie do a roll call vote?
Yes, give me just a second. Chair Henderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Belong,
Yes.
Commissioner Lenore,
Aye.
Commissioner Hugh Boy,
Yes.
and I have forgotten it. I don't have it in front of me. Sorry. I cannot see.
Corona.
Sorry, Commissioner Corona. I wasn't sure
Yes.
who I missed there. All right. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you. We will move on to item 3, zoning ordinance overhaul 2023-3. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, this will be Erica Fraser, senior planner.
Excuse me. The planning commission has reviewed plan developments 3 times. 2 times was just brought before the planning commission on February 9th and March 9th, and that was really for staff had a number of questions and asked for direction from the planning commission on how to proceed. Based on those 2 study sessions, we then drafted the new plan development ordinance for the zoning ordinance and brought it before you on May 11th. And at that meeting, you did ask for some clarification regarding future modifications to plan developments. So a few changes were made, and I'll discuss them in a little while. So for anyone that's listening online, a plan development is a flexible zoning device that redefines the land use or development standards that would otherwise apply with the strict application of the zoning ordinance for a particular district. Plan developments are typically used to redefine development standards to allow for potentially a mix of housing types or setbacks, to plan for large developments, and to establish site-specific uses. During the previous study session, staff went and outlined all the sections of the zoning ordinance, so I'm just going to do an overall discussion of what plan developments will be for the city. But the proposed process in the ordinance is that any applicant with a property over 1 acre in size or who is requesting a pre-zone can choose to apply for a plan development. The applicant would submit their plan development plans that provide information on what the proposal is. For example, if they are requesting 5-foot front yard setback, their plans are going to center around that. If they're requesting a much more intensive development, they would give us more information such as their uses. For example, if they wanted to have a residential development with varying housing types and commercial in one location, they would give us all that information. And that would be through maps, their written statement, their list of permitted and conditionally permitted uses. As part of that process, the applicant is going to identify the public benefit of their project, and the public benefit is something they're giving to us in return for this request. So it could be open space, it could be affordable housing, it could be plazas, whatever they're choosing to provide for us that becomes a unique feature of that development that provides a benefit for the city. Once all the information is submitted, staff will review the proposal, as we've discussed in a previous study session, how staff reviews projects. We would review it in that manner for completeness, as well as any comments we might have on their proposal. And at the same time, if the applicant wanted to submit for any other application, so pre-zoning would be one, if they were doing a pre-zoning with the plan development, we would review them all together. Once we are satisfied in the completeness process, obviously review under CEQA is required. We'd review to see if it required CEQA, and if it did, we would have to prepare whatever that required documentation was. Of course, that's project specific. And then once that's ready, staff would then schedule the item for review by the Planning Commission. For the hearing process, the Planning Commission would review the proposed plan development during a noticed public hearing, along with any other application requests they have. The Planning Commission would then make findings regarding the proposal, and those findings are in the plan development ordinance. The Planning Commission would make a recommendation to the City Council with their findings. The matter that would then be scheduled for a public hearing before the City Council. The City Council would review your recommendation as well as the proposed request, and then they would make their findings and act on the requests. Once that's done, the project area would be rezoned to plan development. And for example, it'd be plan development, and then we're going to include the number after it so we can find it easier on the map. The zoning map will show it. And development of the site could be phased over time if that's part of their plan development. And then any future development of the site is required to conform to that plan development. So even though we have a plan development in place, there are often changes that we make to projects, and this could be one of them. So we wanted to be able to capture what do we do in case a person does need or wants to make a modification to their project. So one opportunity would be a minor modification through the Development Services Director. And that would just be a minor clarification or an adjustment if it needed to be made. And an example of this kind of minor change could be a plan development maybe has been around for 100 years. We don't use cars very much anymore, maybe in 100 years, I don't know. And the parking requirements in the zoning ordinance have changed to be less strict, but this plan development still requires a parking requirement from today. That could be an easy adjustment that the director could review and approve because it would be consistent what's in the zoning ordinance at the time. I have had plan developments in other cities where they are very, very, very specific, where they specify the type of roof everyone can have on their house. And then 40 years later, that roof is not around anymore. And so you have to make an adjustment. And so as part of a minor process, the city that I was in, the director could approve that change as long as it matched the color. and the homeowners association was okay with it. So those are kind of some minor examples. Chrissy during the last meeting mentioned that in one of her cities that she worked for, the plan development didn't discuss fences. And so they were having a hard time with fences. Sometimes there are omissions that we don't catch at the time. So it's nice for the director to be able to say, we know you want fences in a single family residential development. You know, we'll amend this PD that you follow the zoning. So those are some of the minor administrative modifications that we'd like to cover under the director level, so they don't require going to a planning commission for some of these smaller items. And I did modify the language a little to state, where necessary, the development services director by administrative action may clarify the provisions or make minor adjustments to conform to current provisions of the zoning ordinance, to revert to relevant sections of the zoning ordinance where necessary, and to approve minor modifications to a plan development that does not conflict with the development standards, density, or intent of the plan development. So if someone came to us and said, hi staff, I'd like to add 10 more units to my plan development, that's not us. Now they're changing that density. If they are coming to us and they say, well, you approved us for commercial, can't you just change it to industrial? It's, you know, similar. That's not the same. That does not hit us at all. So that's where we're trying to go with these minor modifications. The next level would be, now we're changing something around that while we are still within the intention of that plan development, there is something about it where staff doesn't feel comfortable with amending it, and we'd like it to go before the planning commission. So an example could be, they proposed a 5-foot front yard setback, but they'd like to go to 4.5 feet. We'd like to come before the planning commission. If they needed to shift something slightly within their land use map, we'd like to come before the planning commission. It's things that are not necessarily minor that we'd like it to be before a public hearing, but again, it can't change the intent of that plan development. It can't change what the plan development was designed to do. So again, I changed it slightly to kind of incorporate that language so that you would be required to make a finding that whatever amendment they're proposing substantially complies with and does not materially change the provisions, intent, land use, or development capacity of the applicable plan development. If someone has a plan development and they have come to us and they ask for 100 units of multifamily and let's say 100,000 square feet of retail, and then they decide that they only want to do houses, that's a complete change to their plan development. They'd have to go back to city council because they are completely changing the intent of that plan development. As part of this, with these new modifications that we're proposing, there's obviously no fee because we don't have them now. So we're not proposing to change the existing plan development fee. We're proposing that stays the same. We think with the new ordinance and with the process that we've established, these will run smoothly, even though we now will have an extra meeting. We think that no extra staff time should be necessary because we'll fall within the monies that we account for right now. For modifications that the director can approve, we're requesting a fee of $1,603.90, which is the total fee. And what we're following with this one is the admin permit review fee. We feel it will be the same because that admin permit review fee covers staff time for reviewing the proposal, talking to the applicants, writing up the approval, working wherever we need to with other staff within the city. And so we feel that it would be covered under that fee. For minor modifications, I took the existing plan development fee and cut it in half. So we came up with $4,510.50. And then that fee came from the conditional use permit fee is higher, but with a conditional use permit, typically you're working with applicants that aren't used to going through the process. There's a lot more staff time that's involved with those, as well as dealing with surrounding neighbors that might have concerns about a conditional use permit. So those would require a little bit more staff time than something like this. But again, we'd have to write a staff report. route to city departments, and so we've selected this as the appropriate fee for that. In conclusion, the Planning Commission has reviewed amendments to the zoning ordinance related to plan developments during 3 study sessions. By requiring a rezone for plan developments, the use of the plan development tool will be expanded in the city and provide a new opportunity for our applicants and property owners who wish to develop their property. We've prepared this ordinance to make it clear who can apply for a plan development, what the process is, how you get to approval, and what the submittal requirements are. And staff believes that the new process will result in more attractive, well-planned projects, will provide a unique opportunity to all developers in the city, will provide a clear path to approval, and could result in time and money savings for applicants. The Planning Commission has 3 options tonight. One is to adopt the ordinance as it is written. The second is to propose modification, is to adopt a resolution recommending approval with some modifications proposed by you. The third is to continue the hearing and provide staff with direction. And staff is recommending that the Planning Commission select option number 1 tonight. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Not tonight. Oh, wait, I lied.
Go ahead.
I almost got away. So let me see if I got this straight. The planning commission is still gonna hear plan developments, making a recommendation to the city council. Well, so at that time, aside from design standards that you might adopt at that time, will I have a valid time or an opportunity to voice my concerns regarding setbacks?
So let's say during a hearing, you're reviewing a plan development, you're making a recommendation, right? So if you didn't like it at all, your recommendation could be for denial. You could ask the applicant, whatever it is, I like your project, but why do you want to allow, I don't know, a carnival in the middle of your site? We don't agree with that. And, you always have these options like you have tonight. Do you approve it?
Setbacks is what I'm really concerned.
Do you not like the setbacks could be one of them. You could say, the planning commission could say, we do not approve, we do not like these setbacks. And so you always have options and you will.
But once you said design guidelines, which you're getting ready to do, then I'm a little concerned we won't have that leeway to say we might not like that setback. So keep that in mind when you're doing the design standards, that I might not be in agreement with the really small side yard.
So I haven't gotten very far. Well,
Will I have an opportunity though, right?
Yeah, so the design guidelines are very general. The design guidelines will not have setbacks in them. There will not be any setbacks in them. You absolutely, even though you are not making the decision on the plan development, you are not saying approval or denial, you get to weigh in on the project and you will still have your 3 options. Just like tonight, you're not approving anything, you're making a recommendation.
Right.
So you could recommend at that hearing, sir, I do not like your 5-foot setback. I want you to be at 10. You could say, staff, can you please go back and work with the applicant because I have some concerns or I have some questions or I'd like some additional information or whatever it is. Same process as today, except instead of you saying approved or denied, you're saying, I recommend approval to the city council. I recommend denial to the city council. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
I wouldn't want to deny something based on just a side yard setback, but I want to be able to appeal to my colleagues up here about something I'm concerned with. And then if there was a majority on here that did agree that something needed to change, then we would have the ability to recommend. But we can't make them.
Commissioner Lenore, if I might, specifically to setbacks and anything else that's in the code, the goal is with the zoning amendment, the zoning overhaul is to reevaluate and look at all of our requirements in this general zoning. And so once those are established, if they're changed or modified, we will always have the zoning ordinance, and that is what applicants will have to follow. The goal of the plan development is if they don't want to follow the ordinance that the planning commission has recommended and the city council has adopted, they're providing some sort of benefit or unique design or something like
I
that.
understand.
And that is definitely discretionary for the planning commission. You can say, I don't like your plan development, go follow our code. We like our code requirements better. So you always have the code and applicants always have the code.
Okay.
The plan development is, they say, we have this great idea and it doesn't quite fit if you apply the code strictly. So we're requesting you to kind of give us our own code because we're doing this great.
I
project
understand
design.
that.
So it's significantly more discretionary, whether it's housing, which, as you know, has some pretty strict non-discretionary, very objective requirements right now. But with a plan
Right.
development, this is a discretionary request. You don't have to approve it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So I said this before, and I don't really know what my fellow commissioners think about this, but we're trying to streamline this process and make it easier for the applicant, and yet now we also at the same time we're prolonging it by bringing it to the city council, and I still have an issue with the city council involvement in this process. I know it's been done in other cities, but how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the role of the city council? I mean, here we are, we're developing design guidelines. We're totally capable of making decisions. And yet now we're also prolonging the whole process and bringing it to the city council.
At this point, I think we just need to ask questions of staff, and then if you want to deliberate after the public comment, then we can do that. So, is there any questions for staff? Any further questions for staff? Okay, we'll move on to the public comment at 7:13. Any speakers?
I did receive a speaker card from Victor Gomez.
Honorable Commissioners, Victor Gomez with Pinnacle Strategy. My first question is in regards to the fees. As you all know, our fees are astronomical, 3 times more than the city of Gilroy and Morgan Hill. It's more expensive than San Jose. And that's scary. Nothing to do with this. That was already challenged, and unfortunately the fees were upheld. But specifically to the fees that Erica or staff proposed, and thank you, Erica, for your work on this. I just wanted to see how we got to those fees, because obviously there, as your attorney will tell you, you have to have a nexus, right? Demonstrating why you're charging that much. So maybe some clarification on that would be helpful. I'm always scared when we're talking about, especially residential development, playing politics with it. Because if we go to the city council for absolutely anything, it's going to get political. It has nothing to do with housing, has nothing to do with community needs, community benefits. It has everything to do, unfortunately, with politics. And I say that less under the new leadership of the city than I would have in the past. But still, politics comes into play. Now, I may have missed some of that process, but the process that Erica outlined was enticing. It looked pretty good, and there's actually a couple of projects that I could think of that would have fallen into that quite nicely. So I may have missed the part of anything other than these proposed changes going to the city council. Anything above and beyond these proposed changes, and any plan unit development, any minor modifications or changes should be either kept as designated by the planning director or the planning commission. You're here obviously to do the good work of the city and plan well. Now regarding your comment, Carol, on setbacks, the new general plan is beyond scary. If you look at the proposed 20% IHO that's included, and you have a state and potential local density bonus, you're not going to see any single family or medium density. Don't worry about setbacks, because all the buildings are going to be stuck together, right? If those plans move forward. But specifically on this, I just wanted to get some clarification on the fees and maybe a little bit more explanation on the process and city council involvement and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Does staff want to respond to the question about fees?
I mean, I touched on it in my presentation, so staff has several fees right now. The closest site and architecture is a high fee, but that is for, like you have tonight. There were plans, there are multiple city departments involved. The conditions of approval are long. There's a staff report, it tends to be more intense. There's a lot more back and forth with an applicant. That's a high fee. But for an admin permit fee, we have the fees that we have. That admin permit fee is supposed to cover projects that maybe take 1 or 2 reviews. Staff prepares an action letter, conditions of approval. There's our time spent, a request comes in, right? We have to review the request. We have to write an incomplete letter if it's incomplete. We most often do. I have not had an application come in yet that is complete. So that all involves staff time. So that's where that fee came up with, because we have a fee right now that is for director level decisions, that 1,000, I'm always bad at remembering numbers, $1,600. So that fee is already established today and we use it for a number of projects. I would expect that minor modification where someone's submitting it to the director would fall within the minor modifications that we're already approving under the director, and it's the same process. For the ones that would require staff can no longer do it, but it has to go to the planning commission. Again, that fee of $9,000 seems too high, even though that's what we charge today for a planning commission review and approval. We feel that, again, with the standards that we have in place, the requirements that we have in place, we're going to end up with better projects and it'll be easier for people to follow. So that should reduce staff time in assisting applicants. But again, it's going to require staff report, that's staff time. It's going to require us to prepare resolution, attend a meeting, present, as well as that initial work that we do, which is the completeness review. Is it really a minor modification? Do you have all the necessary documents? Whatever you're doing, does it trigger anything else? So again, that's where the monies from that fee comes from. But again, as I mentioned before, we have a higher fee, which is the $5,000, which is the conditional use permit. But the reason I suggested the lower fee is with a conditional use permit, that higher fee, I believe, comes from, these are usually applicants that aren't used to submitting to a city, so they require more assistance by staff, more handholding, if you will. And there are, as always, is the potential that whatever they're doing upsets the neighbors. And so there's much more discussions that we have to have in public outreach that we would have to have on a conditional use permit. That's why I'm recommending a lower fee in that case than what we have for a similar type item going to a planning commission.
And Chair Henderson, this is Christy Hopper, if I could add. The fees themselves are, at this point, we're trying to find comparable fees that are currently adopted fees. The city council we are going to be engaging in a user fee study to take a look at all of our fees. So at this point, this would be establishing a fee that's as comparable as possible to our already established fees, and those possibly could change in the future. But the city council would need to opine on the fee, so we would have a fee to charge once this ordinance goes into effect.
All right, thank you. Next speaker.
I have no other speakers, Mr. Chair.
We'll close the public comment at 7:20. So let's jump back to your
I apologize
question.
for
No
speaking out
problem.
of turn.
If I could weigh in on Commissioner Huboy's concern. The main reason, from my perspective at least, that this has to go to city council is because the plan development requires a zoning change or a zoning ordinance change, and the city council adopts the zoning ordinance, so only they have the authority to make changes to it. So that's the difference between the current plan development, which requires a CUP, I believe.
It's complicated. The current ordinance is not clear on actually who can have a plan development. That's number one. The process within the code that we are going to follow from now on is if you are in the performance overlay, you require the performance overlay zone, then you require the plan development, and then you require a performance agreement from the city council that would ultimately have to be approved. by the city council. It's in the zoning ordinance. We are required to follow it. We
Yeah.
just haven't been.
That's currently how it is.
So because of the zone change, we're a body that cannot make those decisions.
So with the allowances that we are allowing, it is not appropriate for it to be done through a conditional use permit. And that's what we've been discussing this whole time. And a rezone is a recommendation by the planning commission to the city council, no matter what the rezone is. So if you went from R1 to R4, whatever it is, it goes before the city council. And though the process seems longer now, we anticipate that it will actually be faster with this cleanup of the code and the cleaning up of the ambiguity, the cleaning up of like, what are the submittal requirements? We think we'll start moving people through faster. That's again why we're not proposing to change the $9,000 fee that we have in place. We think we'll start moving faster. And as the carrot for everyone, we're opening it up to much more people and for more things so that we can allow them to really plan their projects and create some interesting sites and areas for the city.
Well, I'm a total proponent of planned development. So I mean, that's where you can get creative and come up with something that's unique. It's just that the role of city council involving that city council in the process. I know the reason, thank you. But I still have a problem accepting that.
Mr. Lenore.
Well, David, I hear your concern and I already voiced that, but somewhere along the line, I guess I'm comforted by the fact that every jurisdiction around us except for one does it this way. And yeah, we're gonna lose the last say and hopefully they don't get more than they bargained for. Because you do have to understand planning when you're approving tentative maps and land developments and it's a lot of work. And hopefully they'll be up to doing that. It's a zone change. We can't do it. It can't be done by us. Hopefully they'll look at our recommendation like they always have and give it every consideration and value our expertise in our comments and recommendations. And they'll have to find their own way around what one good thing it'll bring. It will bring more public participation because the public is more in tune with the city council than they are the planning commission. So when they put that on the council agenda, they might get more comment from the public because they'll be more aware of it. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing because I feel like sometimes we're here and we approve things and nobody's watching. So this might be an extra thing for the public to have say, hey, there's this plan development. Just a sign of the times, David, I guess. But we still have the great privilege of recommending to our city council.
That's true. Thank you.
And this came from somewhere. Somebody got direction to bring it and maybe start having them, unless it's just all linked to the zone change, which obviously we can't do. Because it requires an
Well, I know what
ordinance.
Mary Paxton told me a long time ago. We're the workhorse for the city council.
Of course, and that's appropriate.
We do all the thinking for them.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm very proud
I
to be
said
able to
that,
recommend.
I said that with some hyperbole.
Yeah, okay. Oh, let's see. We've already had a few meetings, study sessions. So I just wanted to chime in with my cohort, Commissioner Uboy, that I do understand what he's saying, but I think it'll be all right. I think it'll be all right.
Okay. Thank you, Carol.
Okay.
Commissioner Lenore.
And that's all my comments or questions for this item, Chairman Henderson.
Thank you. Anyone else have some comments? Well, I'll just say, we've been through a few study sessions about this. I'm on board with the concept. And I'm looking forward to seeing what variations or interesting projects might come about. So that's all I have to say about that. Is there a motion?
I'll move that we approve resolution number PC 2023-17. A resolution of the planning commission recommending to the city council approving of a zoning ordinance amendment for plan development permits and replace with the new chapter as presented, and the adoption of application fees related to admin and minor modifications to the plan development process as stated in the resolution. Did this have findings? I'm sorry.
No, this type of thing. does not.
Okay, as stated in the resolution, as presented.
Okay, any question on the motion that was made? Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
I'll take it. Commissioner Huboy,
Yes.
Commissioner Belong,
Aye.
Chairperson Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Corona,
Yes.
Commissioner Lenore.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move to item 4. Under new business. Planning Commission Policy 2023-1. We have a staff report.
Yes, this will be Erica Pricer as well. You need it.
I just had it. moved.
Oh, here you go.
Thank you. Several months ago, back in November of 2017. And in December on December 15th, 2022. The Planning Commission discussed some potential changes to the site and architectural review chapter, some interim changes that staff was asking for. And those were ultimately not adopted. So the site and architectural chapter exists as it did before that. One thing staff is having trouble with currently is our findings. And so we are proposing a planning commission policy, and I'll go into more detail on what findings are and what the policy will be. But staff is asking for findings to help us prepare the resolutions to the planning commission. So findings are specific reasons provided by the reviewing body related to the approval or denial of a project. Findings form part of the legal record for the project. And while important for the meeting and preparing the resolution and the reasons why you would want to approve or deny a project, findings are very important to staff. After a project is approved many years down the road, staff often goes back and looks at staff reports and findings and conditions of approval to determine why a project was approved. There might be something unique about the site and we have questions about it. There might be a condition of approval that we kind of question later on that's still standing, and we look to that record to help us form a kind of more of an answer on why something was approved, especially when you go years down the road. Staff, is probably no longer around, different planning commissioners, and that's what we use to guide us. Findings are required by the state of California, and a city is not allowed to make a boilerplate finding. It has to be specific to the project. And what I mean by boilerplate is you can't just say the project is consistent with the general plan, period. You have to say the project is specific, the project is consistent with the general plan, and then you have to provide specifics. So when staff is preparing the resolution for you, such as a site and architectural review that you saw before you tonight, staff is preparing the step-by-step reason why we think a project should be approved. So for example, they meet the parking, the use is consistent. They hit that 10% landscaping requirement for industrial projects. They meet the setbacks. We are establishing all of that information within the findings. Right now, that section of the zoning ordinance does not include findings. And so because it didn't, staff has been using 3 very generic findings in all of your resolutions. And it's basically the project as condition will comply with the policies of the general plan because the proposed project as consistent is consistent with, and then we insert some sections of the zoning ordinance. And the proposed project would not be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood or to the general welfare of the city because, and then we fill that. The problem with these findings is that we've kind of made them up. They're not a direction by anyone for us to use, and they are very vague. And it can become hard when trying to craft the conditions of approval for a project because we're fitting within these three, and sometimes it kind of becomes quite outlandish on some of them. So what we're asking for is help tonight. The site and architectural review chapter will be modified. We will have findings in it, but that is probably not anticipated to be adopted until January at the earliest, maybe even later, because we still have a number of sections that we're working on in this phase 2 of the overhaul. It's all the permitting section.
Hey, excuse me. I paid Jane for a few seconds. Did you say site and architectural? The other part of the site, say that again?
So phase 2 includes all of the permitting chapters.
Okay,
So it's general plan amendment, specific plan amendment, development agreement,
yeah,
conditional use permit, site and architectural review, and others. Temporary use permits.
right.
This is a lot of work we're doing right now. Phase 2 is a lot of work. And so we don't anticipate that this chunk of the zoning ordinance will be adopted until January at the earliest. We're trying to go as fast as we can, but it requires a lot of staff time, obviously. So we're a ways away from having some nice findings for staff.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
So what we're asking and what the planning commission can do is the planning commission can adopt policies related to their meetings and procedures and things of that nature, things before you. So staff is asking if you could adopt findings as part of a planning commission policy, so then we can use these on site and architectural reviews only. It's just going to be on site and architectural reviews for projects before the planning commission is the only one that reviews site and architectural review. So what we're proposing are 6 new findings. The proposed project is consistent with the goals and policies of the general plan, any applicable specific plans, and any applicable design guidelines similar to the generic first one that we use now. The proposed project is consistent with Title 17 of the Hollister Municipal Code, and then similar to what we do now. And then the number 3 one is similar to what we do now. And that it's happened again. I don't know, it's the wrong thing. So I'm going to read it because this is incorrect. I don't know why this one keeps appearing. This finding keeps appearing in everything I work on. For some reason, I cannot even figure out why.
She's got plan development on the brain.
From your staff report and from the policy. Architectural considerations, including the character, scale, quality of design, site layout, screening of unsightly uses, lighting, building materials, and colors, result in a project that is harmonious with its surroundings, is compatible with other developments in the vicinity, and complies with any applicable design guidelines or standards adopted by the city. Obviously, right now, we don't have design guidelines adopted. If we did, it would get covered in this. If for some reason before the new site and architectural review chapter is adopted or design guidelines, we would have it in place. Screening of unsightly uses would be the screening of trash enclosures, utility areas, storage areas, whatever you could think of in that. And then lighting is obviously lighting for safety. We don't want you aiming lighting at your neighbor. So that would be covered under number 4. Number 5 would be the proposed project is consistent with all applicable requirements of the municipal code and applicable specific plan. We only have one right now. Related to landscaping and screening, including the location, type, size, water efficiency, and coverage of plant materials to ensure visual relief, adequate screening, and attractive environment for the public. These requirements are for the most part, are in the existing zoning ordinance now. We have the requirement that you provide landscaping screening around a parking lot, for example, and it's supposed to be so high to block some views of those cars. this really allows us to lay out a step-by-step reasoning for why, let's say we required some shrubs of a certain nature around a certain thing. So if 20 years down the road, someone goes, why do I have to plant trees to block this entire utility area that everyone can see? We can say, well, your resolution said the tree has to be so high to screen the view of that, and we'd like to continue to do so. And then the last one would be the site has been adequately designed to ensure adequate parking to serve the project and proper circulation for bicyclists, pedestrians, and automobiles. And again, this finding would allow us to really establish what that parking requirement was for the site clearly for the use, let's say, whether it's residential, whatever that required is. If it's, they are proposing a warehouse only and it's 1 to 1,000, then we insert it there. You are proposing a warehouse of so many square feet, that requirement is 1 to 1,000. You require this many spaces. That's what your use is now. So that would allow us to kind of, these new 6 findings would allow us to really establish a record, both for why we're approving a project, or if unfortunately we had to deny a project. And then really to help staff out in the future, if we ever have to go back and look at these records on why we approved something, to kind of assist us, as well as a property owner purchasing a property can come and look at the resolution approving their development. They might want to make sure we didn't approve it with some interesting conditions that they'd have to follow. So it really helps everyone out. And again, just right now, we're a little ways away from getting those findings in the code. These findings are the same findings as the one that we had proposed to the city council back in December. It was ultimately not approved for a number of reasons, because there were other things within that package, but these are the same findings that we had discussed months ago. So in conclusion, staff is recommending a planning commission policy to provide findings to guide staff on the development of the resolutions for you. Findings are required to be made when you approve or deny a project. Again, findings provide a legal record for the city and for the project. And staff is recommending that the planning commission formally adopt the findings for site and architectural reviews, so that staff has a list of findings that the planning commission would like to be made for the project, for projects. Once again, you have 3 options. You can adopt the policy with those findings as written by staff. You can recommend modifications to those conditions of approval and adopt a resolution with those changes. Or you can continue this item and you can direct us to prepare a different policy or anything else that you request. And that concludes this presentation.
Thank you. Could you go back 2 slides? Okay.
These are wrong.
Okay,
Yeah, number 4 is wrong.
all right.
It's a sneaking. Eva will tell you, it keeps appearing on my computer for some reason. I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, that finding is actually our recommended finding from the plan development chapter that you just reviewed. So that's where it's coming from. But the one listed as number 4 in your staff report is related to the architectural considerations.
And I can read it again if you want, since it's been so. The finding isn't within your policy. The actual finding is within the policy we attached to your staff report, or it's on page 3 of your staff report.
Okay, so 4 is actually the one that starts with architectural considerations, including the character scale.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just wanted to make sure everyone understands we're voting on what's in the packet, not on the presentation. So,
This is what we're voting on. This would be your policy that we'd have in place.
Mr. Chair.
yes, go ahead.
Just have a comment on 4. I just want to thank you for including on the number 4 as public art. I appreciate that.
The one on the screen is for plan development. So that,
Oh,
so this
Can't
week is
use
site
that one,
architectural.
although I like it better.
well, I like it for plan development then.
Yes, so
That is
that
the-
one
Just like
is
the
our
public
recommended
art.
finding in plan development, but wrong on the screen for site and architectural.
Okay.
No enhanced architectural features for that essay.
No.
The goal is to have the architectural guidelines in our
Yeah.
design guidelines and code that help tell us what the regulations of the zoning district are supposed to be.
Since I brought that up, it would be nice to have public art and site and architectural. Maybe we can get a little public art mention in there too.
We don't have an ordinance requiring public art. We can put it on the list of things to talk about. That would probably be phase.
We can promote it. We don't have an.
You
ordinance,
can,
but
we can encourage anything. We
And-
can encourage it within the design guidelines, but the design guidelines are a ways away. This overhaul of the zoning ordinance is taking quite a bit of time. And the design guidelines were intended to be part of phase two, but phase two is taking so long that it's probably gonna hit after phase two, and at some point, I'm not sure. The general plan right now is taking precedence over it. And then obviously with these amendments to the zoning ordinance, obviously this is taking a lot of your time. And then staff has all the background work as well too. So unfortunately, I wish I could snap my fingers and it was done, but I only have so many hours in the day.
And I will add that the Arts Commission is considering currently a public art ordinance that would require public art with certain developments or an in lieu fee. So it's something that they're actively working on. So that may transpire soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, just for disclosure, I did receive an email today from Commissioner Lenore pointing out that the staff report referenced a city council meeting from January 17th. So Commissioner Lenore stated in the email that she watched the YouTube presentation and suggested
I
that
watched on the city website.
oh, okay.
On,
Watched on-
but it was actually the wrong date too. It was January 17th.
Oh, okay.
So, but
Yeah, so
do you
just,
want me to comment now?
well, I'm just
Yes,
disclosing
I
that you.
did talk with the chairman on concerns.
And then I also watched the video,
Okay.
and from what I got from the video was that the item went before the city council. There were only 3 city council people present. And I think because it was mentioned, one of them mentioned that there was 1,900 pages in the packet, so they didn't feel like there was enough time to significantly process everything. So I think based on that, they decided to continue the item. I don't remember any date certain, so I just wanted to share.
Can I
Go
speak
ahead.
on that just a bit?
Sure.
The most glaring thing that stuck out at me is the fact that during that meeting, you discussed really site and architectural things, and you barely or didn't even bring up findings. It's in that, and that's what I listened to the whole thing. So it was barely no discussion on findings. And then they were overwhelmed. I could tell they were not ready for that presentation. And then there was only 3 of them there. And that's why they decided not to make a decision. So tonight, I just want to know, here's my question. I'm only considering findings for site and architectural tonight, and that's it.
That is all we are proposing at this time. I don't-
Were you at that meeting in January?
So it was me.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big old long presentation on everything but findings.
The hard thing is that at that point, findings wasn't the most, I don't want to say controversial, but like the bigger ticket items.
It wasn't your issue that night, but
Yeah.
tonight your issue is just adopting findings.
Right, so
Okay.
they didn't, so the hard thing with that meeting is they didn't say, we only want to go forward with one thing, or we only want to go
Okay.
forward with 2 things. We just had a nothing. So
Right.
my point in bringing it up is not that the city council doesn't want the findings. My point is that we've discussed these same findings before.
Okay.
4 people or 3 people I can't remember who was on the commission at that time. So it was discussed before, and it's not that they denied them. It just didn't
No, they
go
didn't make a
anywhere.
decision because
Yeah.
they didn't understand what you were trying to ask them to do, and that's what I observed. But tonight I'm comfortable with what you're proposing. As long as we're just talking about findings, but I gotta say, David, we approved a lot of applications in many, many, many years based on conditions and findings as stated in the staff report. I just thought site and architecturals had findings. I was really surprised to hear that there was no findings, because Mary Paxton was a finding writer,
Mm-hmm.
lengthy findings, the exact ones you're talking about, even better. But you're saying there was none on SNAs?
Not in the 2008 update.
Yeah, so we've always had findings written into the
Tentative maps,
resolution.
CUP, right?
Yes, so all of the code sections, the other code sections, so tentative maps,
Yeah.
CUP, minor temporary use permit, those types of things, they have findings written into their code section, and that's what's put in your resolution.
Okay.
But
okay,
for site
not in the SNA.
architectural, there's nothing codified. So as Erica mentioned in the staff report, there's just been a standard practice of these three generic
You're
ones.
just trying to make them better.
Yeah, so we're trying to make, since we don't have a council direction, i.e. a code that tells us which findings to make at this time, we're asking for, instead of staff kind of just continuing to put these staff decided findings into the report or the resolution, that the planning commission has an opportunity to establish that these are the findings that the planning commission wants to
Okay,
see.
I
in
don't
every
have a problem
resolution.
with this.
But a lot of
Thank
times in the staff report, you go into general plan conformity, neighborhood, the outline contextual sensitivities and that type of thing. And based on the recommendation that supports the recommendation from staff
Right.
in the report.
Yeah, so we always go over kind of these same things that we're talking
Some of
about
these same
with our
things,
reports.
right, in the staff report.
It's just that now the planning commission will tell us which ones to put in the resolution as opposed to the three that were just kind of made up and followed as practice.
We're basically asking for direction from the planning commission to tell us what are the findings you would like us to use instead of the three ones we made up.
But you usually recommend the staff, the findings are part of the staff report. so
Right, I
you're
mean,
gonna
we're
have
still
it.
gonna
Yeah,
we're still gonna write the reasons why. It's not gonna be blank, like we're like, here's your 6 findings. Can you please, tell us what you think? When we're coming up for approval, but we would like you to tell us what findings should we be using when crafting that resolution for you?
yes, but then you're gonna have an extra meeting. How are you gonna do that? You can't come to the meeting prepared with conditions and findings so that we can prove or deny. You're gonna ask us which findings to put in. Doesn't that mean that the resolution has to come back with the findings included? or
No, so it's the same
Just
process
put 'em
as
in there?
today, but we're asking you to identify those findings that we're gonna use. So let's say it's these 6 findings, or if you change them, whatever it is, let's say you add another one. So whatever the findings you're identifying in this policy, we're asking you to give us those instead of these 3 that are on the
I
screen.
understand, but at what point will you interject them into the resolution?
When you have them at the meeting, just like you have now.
So we won't in fact have a correct resolution before us if we make any changes. You know what
No,
I'm saying? If we go with some findings and not other findings, are you gonna, or is it just all 6 of them?
Commissioner Nora, if the planning commission adopts this policy, whether as written or with a change, we would
Right.
implement it immediately. So the next site and architectural
No,
you
no,
see.
no, you're missing my point. My point is you're gonna bring a site and architectural with a resolution without the complete findings already specified.
No,
No.
instead of 1, 2, and 3 with the becauses. So we always put because and we write out the evidence of the
Wait,
finding.
She's asking that we would let her know which findings we would want you to
To-
include.
For tonight, I'm asking that you establish a policy. So moving forward, are we still using these 3 generic findings
Okay.
that we're using, or would you like to, we're asking for you to establish the actual findings that we're
Right,
gonna use?
And that's the only question you're asking us. You're not gonna come later and ask us which of those 6 findings do we
No.
want to apply
We're
to
using all
such and such
6.
permit.
We're using all 6 for every permit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we open for public? Okay, we'll open public comment at 7:50. Any speakers?
I have no speakers.
Okay, we'll close the public comment at 7:50. All right, any other questions or comments from the commission? I'll just, I remember the training I went to. This was just before COVID in Sacramento. And one of the presentations they gave us was at planning commission, that as it was talking about how as planning commissions, it's our job to make findings. And I remember at the time thinking, well, wait a second, I've never made a finding before. But then that's when I realized that the staff, when you put together the resolutions, that you're actually kind of doing that for us or providing a service to us so that we don't have to sit here in a live meeting and think, okay, what are we gonna say to make this, to justify our rationale for approving or disapproving. So I just wanted to make that comment. Any other
I
comment?
will say this,
Yeah.
just to comment on your statement there is that I feel like it's really our responsibility, if we make a decision to let the public know the reasons why. And that's just not to say yes or no, and then leave it at that. You have to be more explicit. And the findings that you come up as a commissioner is your rationalization that bases your decision.
And staff's research and recommendation.
Yes,
Of course, I mean, that's what their role is, to research it and then recommend and comply with our laws.
right.
So
And-
the big talkers, not me and David. Not the smaller talkers, that they just probably understand the staff report and what I'm trying to say is you could say, I agree with staff
Right.
and their staff report
Mhm.
without having to go through everything and spell it all out. People involved in the subject should be aware of what's in the staff report.
Yes.
Not everybody's a big talker, so you don't want to put them on the spot. You have to say something. Now, you could just say, I agree with staff.
You can say that, yes.
Sure.
Or you could, if you
You have to make
deny,
your
let's
own
say you
findings.
deny it and you
Yeah.
don't agree with staff.
Yeah, and then. a lot
Then
of
it's
times
more
people lie.
imperative that you explain the reasons
Right.
why.
I
Instead of
always
just
do,
saying
but
no.
not everybody does.
I think that's the way I've always
Yeah.
seen it for my own conduct.
All right, thank you. Those are very good comments about findings and what our job is here. So any other comments do we have a motion?
As soon as I get back to it, if nobody else wants to. Here it is. So I move that we adopt PC Resolution 2023-18. A resolution of the Planning Commission adopting a policy related to findings for site and architectural reviews as stated in the draft resolution.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You beat me.
We have a second from Vice Chair Belong. Any other discussion on the motion? And I will ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We will move on to old business. Is there any old business?
I have no old business.
Studies. So there's a heading here, study session items. So is that just kind of a leftover from previous
Yeah,
agendas, or?
I had thought about taking it out and then I was like, I don't know if it should leave it in because it's kind of a part of the agenda and we organize the study session. So we don't have a study session item. tonight.
Okay, thanks. Planning department reports.
I do have a report for the commission and I do have a couple of flyers available. The planning department, as the planning commission may be aware, is beginning the process of our housing element update, the 6th cycle housing element update. And we are having a virtual community workshop Wednesday, May 31st at 6 p.m. And it is virtual, so it's over Zoom. And we're going to be introducing the housing element to the public. And this meeting will be available in both English and Spanish. We'll have a live Spanish translation available for that meeting. And we would greatly appreciate the Planning Commission to assist us with outreach to the community and to any of your community organizations, especially the Spanish speaking population of the city. We would really like to make sure that we have as much community input on housing and the housing element as possible as we begin this process. This is where we're going to get feedback from the community that's going to help us guide drafting the policies that we ultimately bring back to the community in the draft plan. But this is an important meeting where we hear feedback up front. So again, that is Wednesday, May 31st at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And you can register for that, and the contact, we have a housing element email set up. That's just housingelement@hollister.ca.gov, and you can email us there with any questions about the housing element, or if anyone has any interest in the meeting, and we'll be happy to help. So that, I believe, is my only report tonight.
Chair Henderson, I apologize to you all for not being there in person today. I am sick, so I'm saving you all from that fault. And my microphone is now working. The Bonito Link actually put out a nice article. I don't know if you've seen it. On May 22nd, the Planning Division held a public outreach meeting on the mobile vending ordinance. And it was very well attended. We had about 36 people show up, and a good cross section of the businesses, both the food vendors as well as brick and mortar businesses. We had some elected officials as well as some directors of our local downtown association, and I believe there may have been a chamber member there as well. So I wanted to let you all know it was a very successful meeting. And we're looking forward to the city council meeting. So hopefully for adoption on June 5th.
Christy, first of all, I hope you're going to be okay, and we'll see you next time. But tell me, which meeting are you referring to? Because I had no knowledge of it.
Yeah, so it
what was it again?
It was an outreach meeting that we did as kind of a bonus meeting, just to do some extra outreach to the public. Because
Who did it?
I did.
So, but we didn't know about it.
No, they announced it, I believe. I remember.
Was I told that they were going to have that?
I think during one of our previous meetings during the planning department reports, they mentioned.
While I was on here?
I think so.
Man,
When you were here.
I was sorry I missed that.
It was
in tune with that stuff.
It was a good, and what we did is I put together flyers and actually went out at farmers market and hand delivered them to the mobile vendors, because a lot of the time they're not kind of watching what's going on in the city. We also posted it on the city's social media. It was sent out to.
Yeah, it was in the Bonito Link. You said, was there something in the Bonito Link for that workshop?
Yesterday, there was a.
It's already done, right?
Yeah, the reporter did a great job. It was just it was really an informational session and an opportunity for the public to ask questions more informally, because they don't always get a lot of chance when they're at and it's a little intimidating in front of planning commission or city council sometimes, and you have a 3-minute time limit. So we wanted people to really understand the ordinance. And sort of where to find it, the types of permitting, because it is something new. And we found that it was very well received. So,
awesome.
So I just wanted to give it.
By any chance, did it have any recordation of it, or?
No, this one was not recorded. This was in person only. It was just Eva and I were there to just to talk to the public. I think that in the future, especially with new ordinances such as this public outreach and trying to find creative ways to reach people. Commissioner Lenore, we've really taken to heart what you've said with the lack of participation, especially at Planning Commission from the public. And so we're hoping to, as much as we possibly can, do creative outreach to try to reach the target populations that really need to know about these ordinances. So. Anyway, that is the only update that I have today.
Thank you.
Chairperson Henderson, Director Hoppers reminded me with her report that I would just report out, if I may, that the city also did our outreach for the general plan update that we reported that we were doing last time. On May 17th, Amber, myself, and Carrie Stone from PlaceWorks attended the farmers market, and we were able to speak to over 70 people about the general plan, and then let them know about our virtual workshop, which happened on May 18th, the following day. And I believe we had less participation there. I want to say maybe 15 or so participants on the virtual workshop, but we have been receiving comments and since the outreach at the farmers market, because we were giving everyone our emails and we had some boards up for people to look at a few of the key policies and also just give us general feedback on the general plan. So I believe we got some good feedback and we've been getting some emails from the public since then to our general plan email. So we're happy about the outreach that we were able to receive to the community there on the 17th and 18th.
Yeah, I stumbled upon your booth.
That's right.
Yeah. It's unfortunate they put you away at the end of everything. I mean, seems like they could intersperse the informational booths among the fun stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Right, we're not very exciting.
Yeah, okay. Any other department reports?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
move on to planning commission reports. I believe Commissioner Lenore had something.
Let's see, a couple of things. Get back to my. So today I met with, come on. Where are you at? I'm sorry. Planning Commission. Just give me a second. I met with a young lady and Anaceli Arredondo. I hope I have that right. I just put it in the planning commission and now all of a sudden I met with a young lady from GP AP government class. Miss Arredondo today at the Veterans Memorial Plaza. I told her it's my favorite building. Let's meet down there. Well, she came and we met at 1 o'clock and she asked me some great questions. And of course, I talk 100 miles an hour, explaining things to her and told her about the PD and how we were amending that and why we were amending it. Talked to her about we have a proposed battery storage system. I took my packet with me. And then she asked me, what would I recommend how young people can get involved? I go, you know what, young or old, you can get involved. So call the city clerk and ask her to put you on the mailing list for the planning or the planning department to be put on the mailing list for the planning commission agenda. You can even go so far as to get the link for the packets and it's all there. And then I would recommend also for policy decisions, you might want to find what the city council is doing because we all work together. They tell us and then we figure it out and then they adopt it. So I told her, we need more people. We need young people. Us old timers are getting tired. And so she was going to go back and tell the class, I think, that they could get copies of the agendas and how they could get more involved. And I tell her, and if you want any more questions, you just give me a call, email me with any questions your class might have, and I'll do my best to answer it. It was a very nice visit, almost an hour. She said I gave her a lot of good information and she was very happy. And I congratulated her because she's going to graduate on June 9th. So I believe her name was Anaceli Arredondo. So I congratulated her there. So that's what I did today. I also informed her too that and along the lines of the same, we had a mayor that supports economic development because she wanted to know what's the city support. City supports economic development. We really want to get moving on that. She talked to me about housing. I mentioned Rena a little bit so that she understands why sometimes we have to do the things we have to do. So that's my only let's see, one more thing I wanted to request, and I already asked staff. I don't believe I got the ag preservation plan when you gave us the general plan and the climate action plan. So I need a copy of the ag preservation plan. And then I'll remind you again that I need those large maps. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenore. If I could just respond to the copies, if that's okay through the chair. We're looking into the maps because we don't have access to our building right now. We don't have access to our plotter, but we are looking into getting high quality maps printed and what that would cost or what it would take to do that. So that's on staff's mind.
Budget for that general plan. So we want maps. We need to get them.
And then we should have a copy for you actually in City Hall. And I think Amber went away to get it. So we'll get that to you tonight.
Current and proposed. I need both.
For the
I
preservation.
need the
policy.
general plan 2005, 2023, and then this one, 2023, 2040. I need both those general plan maps.
We're working on the logistics
Okay,
of that.
thank you. And if you can't do it, let me know. I'll pay for it. I'll do my own. I can't see those maps. If I can't see it, how am I supposed to know what it's doing? So I'll buy my own if there's no budget.
Commissioner Lenore, what we are also doing in the interim until we can get those printed, we've had PlaceWorks put higher quality maps on the website so you can zoom in. The other thing that is on the website is a GIS map. So
Right.
you can turn layers on and off. So that's now been added. So that adds a little bit more of a tool for people to be able to zoom in. And then, of course, those printed maps will get to you as soon as we can.
Yeah, I'm old school and I'm not versed in GIS. So I'm old school and that's how I like it. And I can draw on those maps. Thank you. Thank you, Christy.
Anything else to report from the commission? Okay, we have reached the end of our business, so I will adjourn the meeting at 8:07. Thank you.
Hey.